The Harlem Renaissance represented a time period in African American history at which talents, religious ideals, and foundations for their culture were shined upon. This time period lasted between the 1920s to a few years into the 1930s. During this time, an uprising of black culture submerged streets, neighborhoods, and even states, all originating from Harlem, New York. Though blacks during this time had already had basic beliefs and customs, this period was significant in that their culture was finally realized by other Americans. Christianity played a significant role in the lives of this culture. Christianity is the religion stemming from life teachings in the death of Jesus Christ, the belief in God as the Father Almighty, and Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior who proclaimed to man the gospel of salvation. Through the belief of Christianity, African Americans combated their struggles in society by representing their future successes through paintings, music, and literature. Because of their strong belief in the Christian religion, a surplus of churches, worship centers, and even religious music manifested throughout. The Bridge Street Church of Brooklyn, New York, is found to be the eldest black church originating from the area with dates as far back as 1776. However, the Abyssinian Baptist Church, first developed in 1808, faced relocation during the Harlem Renaissance due to the fact that their entire congregation had grown so large that they had to open another building between 1922 and 1923. During these many years, these churches sang hymns, religious songs, or poems of praise to God, which then influenced the songs of gospel music. Gospel music is the name for the music African Americans developed, capturing their religious beliefs in worship sprouted during this time period as well. The development of choirs and choruses came about during this time period as well. The gospel music was generally sung by choirs, but there were a few individual artists who wrote gospel music and sung alone. Because of this era of music developed, many groups came together to hold gospel mass concerts in famous venues still used today, like the Apollo Theater. A woman that had high respect in the choral direction industry was Eva Jesse. She was the first black woman to receive international distinction of being a professional choral conductor, and even went as far as creating her own choir, the Eva Jesse Choir. Due to the uprising of black culture during the Harlem Renaissance, many religious ideals continue to fall in place and are followed by later generations today. The use of gospel music has grown tremendously and has different varieties, even still including hymns founded by ancestors long ago. Because the black elders provided a foundation for the black society to showcase their individuality, it is because of them that today Americans respect the wide ranges in black culture.
Another art form that reflects Christianity during the Harlem Renaissance are paintings. Painters like Aaron Douglas and William H. Johnson used their artwork to portray what Christianity was during the Harlem Renaissance. One painting that includes Christianity was The Judgment Day by Aaron Douglas. The painting shows 5 African American men, 4 either being condemned or redeemed for their time on earth. This piece shows what Christians believed in life after death was like. The man in the middle is Archangel Gabriel. He's standing with one foot on the mountaintop and the other in the sea. Gabriel is seen blowing a trumpet and holding the key to the kingdom of heaven. In Christianity, Archangel Gabriel blows his horn to indicate the Lord's return to earth. In the Bible, the key to the kingdom of heaven is whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you lose on earth shall be lost in heaven. Aaron Douglas painted Archangel Gabriel this way to show what he believed in and what others believed in during the Harlem Renaissance. Many people at the time tried their best to get into heaven and were terrified to be condemned to hell. On the left side of the painting, there is a lightning bolt striking down into the water. The man next to the lightning bolt represents 2 things. One is being condemned to hell. Christians believe that the Lord could either condemn someone or redeem someone. The lightning bolt in this painting appears to be striking down on the man, meaning he failed. This could also represent Christians' fear toward hell. The land on the left also is very rocky and rough, which could symbolize the underworld. To the right of the painting is a very bright ray of sun. The sun ray is beaming on a man who is kneeling down with his hands held high. This man is being redeemed. The land underneath him is very wavy and free-flowing. Christians believed that heaven was a place to be free and happy, unlike the land on the left. Also, the key to the kingdom of heaven is on the right side of Archangel Gabriel. This could also correspond with the ray of sun to the right of the painting. Since the key is for heaven and getting into heaven, the right represents heaven and what Christians aspire to go to after they pass.
Literature was a key art form during the Harlem Renaissance. Literature created a window where African Americans could channel their suffering and hardships in the form of art. They could finally show their ideals and morals with this new art form. Many writers at the time featured key ideas in poems and novels that they wrote. These key concepts were called equality and acceptance, two ideals which were very prominent in Christian teachings. Equality during the Renaissance called for a movement of recognition for the African American race. Paul Laurence Dunbar was also known as one of the first African American poets to receive national recognition. While growing up, he attended Davies Central High, where he would also be one of the only African American students attending the school, eventually becoming editor-in-chief in the school newspaper and president of the Literary Society. All of this authority gave Dunbar an opportunity to expose his ultimate goal, which was to give African Americans a voice in society. William Dean Howells, a famous white American literary critic, urged Dunbar to write in an African American way of English. To everyone's surprise, a white critic praising an African American poet for expressing their culture had never been done before. Although Dunbar was able to fulfill this task of talking about African American culture in public in an intelligent manner, it was still dangerous for any African American to do so. Dunbar's boldness, fearlessness, and confidence to defy society's stereotypical norms and standards gave the stepping stones to the popularity of the Harlem Renaissance. Gwendolyn Bennett. Gwendolyn Bennett was known to be a very impactful writer during the Harlem Renaissance. She attended Columbia University and Pratt Institute. During Bennett's studies, she got her first poem published, which was called Nocturne. This poem would be featured in a magazine called Crisis. Soon after, she would be introduced to many more impactful writers, such as Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston. In 1926, Bennett became assistant editor-in-chief in a magazine called Opportunity. She was given the chance to have her own column, which was called the Ebony Flute. This column would be one of the main reasons why she would get so much recognition at the time. Gwendolyn Bennett was a highly impactful writer who caused waves of change during the Harlem Renaissance. What she wrote was always true, and she wasn't afraid to speak among the behalf of the African American community. Being the strong Christian woman that she was, she wrote her novels based on freedom and equality of all African Americans. Bennett's work continues to inspire to this day. Many masterpieces of literature were made during the time of the Harlem Renaissance. There are various types of literature, but out of all the different types, the most popular at the time was slave narrative. One of the most famous memoirs was the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. This was a book written by the famous author and former slave Frederick Douglass. This novel was seen as one of the best during the time of the Harlem Renaissance. In this novel, Frederick Douglass would speak up about the many hardships of being a black slave during the post-war times. Throughout the book, Douglass explains how slave owners kept men and women as slaves by depriving them of knowledge and education, which would eventually force slaves to seek knowledge and education in order to pursue freedom. Over the course of the narrative, Douglass develops a distinction between true Christianity and false Christianity. Douglass shows that slaveholders' Christianity is not the evidence of their innate goodness, but merely a hypocritical show that serves to bolster their self-righteous brutality. To strike this distinction, Douglass points to the basic contradiction between the charitable, peaceful tenets of Christianity and the violent, immoral actions of slaveholders. Many other narratives of the time would highlight the same hypocrisy and cruelty of those who claimed Christianity as their own and yet did not practice the main ideals of Christianity. Messages of hope and freedom in the form of Christianity were often represented in old Harlem Renaissance literature. African Americans represented their culture throughout the Harlem Renaissance with the use of different works of art such as gospel music, artwork, and literature. In these works of art, they heavily depended on the Christian motifs and symbols in their work. Christianity played an enormous role in artists' lives, and it was very easily shown in their work.